All right, here we go. I'm gonna fix something that's not an iPhone today. I have a pair of headphones that was brought in by a local kid named Morgan who said, hey, can you help me fix a charge port? This is some STEELSERIES. This is the Arctis 7 wireless headphones, and he really likes them, and he wants to fix the charge port, which he said started off kind of like you had to wiggle it a little bit, wiggle. Sometimes it would charge, sometimes it wouldn't, until it completely broke off. And in fact, when he brought it in, I looked at this briefly, and the charge port was rattling around inside. So I have taken it apart a little bit, and I got the charge port out. So let's start by looking at the charge port, because that's going to be your first question. Can I reuse the broken charge port, or is it too far gone? So let's take a look at Morgan's actual charge port, which I've got over here. So let's grab the microscope and take a look. All right, so here it is right here on our magnet tray. And see the red on that? The red, each one of the little red pads is actually a pad on the circuit board that's been ripped off when this thing kind of came loose. So that means, we could take those off, and if that was the only problem, we would still be able to reuse this charge port. Let me just show you guys, if you're not familiar with this, how you could take this apart so that you could solder that back on if you wanted to. So you'd have to get rid of the old pad. You've got to get rid of the red stuff. So I'm just going to put a little flux and use a soldering iron and just kind of heat that up. See how they come right off. So the little piece of the pad is now just on the end of the soldering iron. So if I wanted to, I could just clean this up and take those off, so that I would be able to put that back on the board. However, I think that Morgan's port has bigger fish to fry. This one here at the end is the anchor, or we learned from one of our students that had formerly worked at Apple that these are not called anchors like we call them. They're called mechanical flange. I thought that was hilarious. The mechanical flange at the end. All right, so this is, in theory, you could put it back on, but here's the question. You want to look at the actual inside to see is this a good one or not. So when I look at Morgan's, I was kind of like, if I couldn't source this anywhere else, if I couldn't get a better one, that one is probably okay. What do I mean by that? Look at the little black center part, this right here. That is what your cable has to snap onto. And if we look at Morgan's, let's kind of drill down really, really close up. It's just kind of a little chewed up. It's a little rounded on the edges, although I think that all of the pins are intact. And this is what I told Morgan when he was here. I was like, I don't really love your port, but rather than throw the headphones away, I would resolder it, because it is intact. It's just not great. But you can see why it's been hard for him to like get good contact on this one. So I said, hey Morgan, let's just look around the shop and see if we can find anything else that has a micro USB port that we could harvest and put that on your headphones. And I'm doing this live, so I wonder, chat, what would you look for around your shop? I found something that I think all of us have that I'm going to take apart. I'm going to upcycle, and I wonder if you guys can guess what it is. Let's see. I literally just put in my headphones. That's really funny. Did you get the other phones from the last live stream repaired? I don't remember. I've made a video that I'm going to edit that was a 13 Pro Max from Drive Savers that had a full crack in the PMU, and all the guy did was fall down backing up to like catch a ball at Little League, and that one I think is going to be a good one. So that's what I've been working on. Could it be swapped for a USB-C port instead of micro USB? That is a great question, and I don't think so, because the listening chips where this guy's gonna connect to is likely different. So I don't think you could do that. You couldn't do that with like a lightning port. You can't turn that into USB-C because the biology of how the device communicates with a port is completely different. USB-C has USB-C has to negotiate with the charger, and it's a little bit more complicated than micro USB, which is just a straight up like lines that it's just a socket pretty much. Okay, so here's what I came up with. I'm gonna upcycle this. I'm gonna upcycle, dun da da da. I have set up my my stream stuff a little bit better. I'm gonna upcycle a TriStar tester. This is the original. Look, it's still the kind that's the 3D printed plastic. I happen to have this, so anything would work that you just don't need anymore. In fact, Morgan suggested that maybe we should grab a micro USB off of a wireless charger that he had in his car. And so he brought it in, and guess what? It was even worse than this one. And so Morgan and I had to have a little chat on how you got to look at that cable and make sure you're not just mashing it in there, because these things are plastic, right? Right here. This is the guts of the TriStar tester that we use for diagnosing iPhone charging problems in the older phones. And it itself has a battery and it has a micro USB port. So let's look at this micro USB port. And here's what I want to do for you guys that might be trying to fix yours at home. I want to just compare side by side a relatively intact one with Morgan's so that you can see what I mean when I'm like, oh, yours, you might want to look for a better one. If you're gonna go to all this trouble, it's nice to have like a good one that's gonna really clip in there. So let's go back to the microscope and compare these guys side by side. All right, so here's the microscope. So here is the nice one that I'm gonna harvest out of this TriStar tester. So you can see the individual, you better be quiet. You can see the individual pins, and this is, solid. It's in the right spot. There's a little piece of, I don't know what that is. Something, a little bit of dirt or debris in there, which is pretty typical. That looks like a normal port, and let's compare that over here to the one that came apart. See how it's just like harder? The plastic is kind of beat up. It's just been connected and disconnected a whole bunch of times. So you can kind of see that. The pins are hard to see. It's just sort of chewed up, a little milty on the edges. All right, so we're gonna fire that one, get out of here, and we are going to hope that our one that we're going to harvest out of this TriStar tester is going to be a match. So first thing, let's go ahead and take this off so that it's ready to go, and then we'll figure out what I don't know, which is how we're going to dissect Morgan's headphones so that we can actually get the board out and solder this on. Step one, either go buy a new one, which is perfectly reasonable, or look around for something that you already have, and we're going to take this cord off. All right, so I gotta get this in focus for me. That's relatively in focus for you guys. And this is, I think I will, maybe I will not solder right directly on top of the battery. So let's take this out. This thing has served us well for a very long time. And now it is a sad state of affairs that the micro USB port is kind of more useful than the sad TriStar tester. Although TriStar tester, we've got so many of them laying around the shop. Still great. We still sell some of those. They're still great for the iPads. Have you ever taken apart a TriStar tester? Well, here's your chance to see inside it. Oh my gosh, I gotta rip this out. Let's see what's going on here with chat. For safety, you need to remove the OLED display and battery. Why do I need to remove the OLED display? All right, I will remove the battery. That is, I would agree with that. What happens to that? Why is that going to hurt me? Nonsense. All right, let's see. I was going to suggest a cheap powered hub, as many devices use that for a 5 volt. So let's see, for your safety, duh. That's okay. Safety has no quitting time. Safety is very, very important. Although I don't think that I have a lot of risk here. All right, let's see. So cute, look at the little button. Love this guy. I love that this was designed by, you know, a regular person. All right, so we've got our solder joints here and on the other side. So what I'm going to do is start by downgrading alloy. So the solder that's on here is likely to be the 220 factory solder, and that is a little strong. It's got a higher melting temperature than I would like to use. So I'm going to downgrade the alloy by just mixing in. This is standard leaded solder. Now, if you are new to my channel and you don't fix iPhones and you don't microsolder and you're just trying to fix your headphones, one thing that I see in sort of DIY, like, hey, help me learn how to solder, which is awesome, is using not enough flux. So see all this juice here? This is flux, which I don't know if I'm smart enough today to figure out how to show you the link to the store. Let me try it real quick. Let's see, search, filter products. What happens if I type in flux? Does it work? Hey, there we go, flux. I'm gonna do the Amtech flux, and there we go. So you can see in the shopping tab now, flux. Get some flux, and then you'll want to have leaded solder. Leaded solder is what I consider the good stuff. It's the stuff that the space shuttle is made out of, and probably the Titan submersible was not. Ooh. I have no evidence for that. That's just an opinion. See people repair stuff and not just throw away stuff and get new ones is great. Yes, it is. All right, so I downgraded the alloy with plenty of flux. So by downgraded the alloy, what I mean is I took the good stuff, the leaded solder. This is the stuff from the 70s, and I mixed that in to make the entire melting temperature of this whole piece way, way, way lower than it would otherwise be. And that's going to help me be able to get this port off. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing over here on the top side, because the last thing I want to do is have the anchor joints melted and the little joints that actually connect to the pads not. So that would be bad. I'm going to grab, I've got flux there, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to downgrade the alloy. Just kind of going over these. Kind of a lot of solder on here to begin with, but okay. So all the way around now we have relatively lower melt temperature. So now with my hot air, I should be able to just take this sucker out. I'm going to use something heavy. This is an Omni vise to just kind of park it on here over on the side. Let me show you. I kind of like this whole setup now. You can kind of, I can switch around easier. There, something like that. And then I'm going to heat it up and just with some tweezers lift this out. But I'm going to do that a little bit over here by the microscope. So let's go back to that. And let's see if I can make it positioned so that you guys can actually see it come out, because that's the fun part, right? Seeing things melt. All right, where is it? There he is. There's my little buddy. Okay, so this should be pretty straightforward. And I am going to make up a temperature. So how do you possibly guess? Well, first of all, these hot air stations, what you have at home if you're doing this DIY is likely some random eBay thing that's not calibrated. Don't even worry about what it says. Just kind of stick it on your hand, you know, just kind of feel around and try to get something that is hot enough but not too hot. So if I was opening up a brand new eBay station, I might set it at 350, 360, 370 Celsius, and I might put the airflow at, I don't know, something about 60, 70, 80%, something like that. All right, so I was just doing a job at very low, so I'm gonna, you know, bring that up a bit. And I'm going to grab some trusty tweezers, and I'm going to look at my microscope. And I think that you could get away without using a microscope on a job like this, but it's easier if you have one. So the only thing I really care about is not being so hot that I melt the plastic. Look at that, so easy it comes up if you've downgraded the alloy. All right, so here's my new guy. And I think there's a little bit of solder on there. Look at that, my little screen is perfectly fine, no danger. All right, we'll put that aside. A life well lived, TriStar Tester OG, a life well lived. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. Maybe we have to use some braid to clean this up. All right, why not heat from the bottom and avoid melting your button? Because that would be too hard to show on stream. Because, you know, this is a little tiny piece, so that's too hard. And now let's see if I can dig up some braid. All right. Okay. Now I think there is kind of too much solder on here from, I don't know, the way that was on there, kind of a big blob, plus me downgrading the alloy. So right now the little anchors aren't gonna sit nicely. And I don't know for sure that this piece will fit, so I may be forced to use Morgan's kind of beat up one. It was okay, it's just not my favorite. All right, so let's just add a little braid and kind of drink up the extra. And let's kind of go over here. It's a little bit out of focus for you guys. There we go. And let's drink up the extra right there. One of the tips about any of these port replacements that we teach you guys at Practical Board Repair School is put a little bit of solder on these pins right here. That way when you use hot air to get it on there, if you've sort of pre-tinned them, then you know for sure that they're going to make a nice joint and everything will be fine. Okay, let me look at the rest of this and I think it's okay. I'll just clean it up a little bit just because it's on TV. A little bit of alcohol. Q-tip and alcohol does wonders for any of this stuff. All right. The more bridging, the better, says Chris. So I don't know about that. Now I'd like to know in chat, have you guys fixed any headphones? I think Chrissy was just saying that she would fix her headphones. Brad would fix his headphones for a problem like this. This is when I asked Morgan when he came in, when I'm trying to figure out, do I want to take this job? What's the value of the device? And it looks like these are worth about $150 right now. And I think this is a very straightforward job that does make sense to do to fix these headphones. Why not? It's very doable. Okay, now let's go for plan B. Let's look at our hand cam. And Chris says he's done a lot of beats. Yeah. In fact, I'm going to go on, I'm going to be an advisor to BBC Science, and we're going to take apart some Bose earbuds, which is going to be a fun episode. And I will let you guys know when that comes up. All right. But I'm looking forward to that. They sent me some in the mail. I used them today, went on a run, and I was like, these are okay. I don't like them as much as my other wireless headphones, though. They had kind of some wind, but maybe that was just me. All right, now, how are we going to get the board out? I don't know. So this is just, live, and I've never done this before, and, we're gonna give it a shot. So I'm gonna put my charge port to be over there, and I'm gonna put my TriStar tester pieces over here. All right, so I took this apart a little bit when Morgan came by, and all we had was 1, 2, 3 screws. And to get those screws out, I used I think I started out with this one, but ultimately I used the handy, trusty iFixit ProTech toolkit, or whatever this thing is called. Owens, thank you, Owen. One of these guys. So the bit that I needed to use was the pretty small the security one. I think it was this guy. One of these really tiny ones. Doesn't really matter. You're just going to figure out, you know, by trial and error from your iFixit toolkit, what is the right bit. So it's one of the Torx with the little hole in it. I think they're called a security bit. Okay, so then you get to this point. All right, so from here, I think it might actually be easiest for us to just desolder the speaker, because otherwise it's going to be hard to keep it all together, because we're going to have to take this piece out. To get the port out, there was 1, 2, 3 same identical screws as this. So we have it might have actually only been 2. I don't remember. It was a couple days ago. So yeah, on the board, 1, 2. I think it was 1, 2. 1, 2 screws. So I took those out, and now there's something that is keeping it in there. So I can't just take it out. Something's holding it in there. So that's where we're going to have to investigate. So step number 1, I am going to go ahead and desolder this ear speaker. You don't have to do that. You could just kind of keep it together. But I think that will make it easier for me to figure out how am I going to get this thing out of here. So let's see. What would it take to desolder my speaker? All right, so I've got, this is the speaker, and the speaker wires are coming in here. All right, chat, we're going to have to remember, let's go back to the microscope. We're going to have to remember which one is which. All right, so we have a little test point here, TP308, and that is near the blue wire. Blue wire near the test point, and then the other one is going to be our ground. So let's get a little bit of flux on here and just take that right off. So that should be nice and easy. All right, and here comes blue wire. There we go. All right, so we'll be able to put that back on later, and that makes it a lot easier. And now this is free. Okay, so now I don't know what's going on, and I'm going to figure this out live, just like you guys, all right? Some people use Chip Quick and a soldering iron. I would not do that. Chip Quick is a removal alloy. So Chip Quick is way, 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 way too low to leave in the device. So don't use Chip Quick. Use leaded solder if you're going to do anything. All right, so let's see. Could I send you my Bose SoundLink headphones to replace the buttons? Yes, if we can source the buttons. A lot of times that's the hard part on these jobs, but absolutely. You can hit us up at iPadRehab.com. Tell us about whatever small thing you're trying to fix, you know, because we want to help shops or you guys fix more stuff. And a lot of this soldering stuff is straightforward or doable, especially if you have microsoldering set up because you've been fixing phones. So we want to help you guys expand beyond just phones. All right, now let's see if we can figure out what is going on here. So I'm going to go back to the microscope, and you and I are going to just look around, all right, and see what is keeping this in there. So I can't really zoom back out. It's interesting on this one, when Morgan was here, I remember telling him that I see what looks like somebody has at one time screwed in the screw wrong. See these little scrape marks right there? You know, that's copper, and that is, there's a screw that goes right there, and somebody must have had it in sideways or something like that. Now I wonder if this happened during manufacturing, or I don't know, but that's just an observation. All right, so let's kind of move around here and see if we can figure out what is keeping this thing in there. All right, so we have a connector with a bunch of wires. So we could disconnect that connector, and I think that we do want to do that because in order to solder the port on, which is on the bottom side of the board, we're going to need to get this out. All right, so my fingers are not really the best tool for this. Let's see. I'd rather not kind of pull it out by tugging on these guys. Oh, but it does look like the... I might do that last. I would expect... There we go. All right, fingernail for the win. The long professional nails. Even the guys in our shop usually have one sort of coke nail that they can use to do stuff like that. Okay, so we're going to remember that the brown one here goes up at the top. Always good to live stream your repairs. That way, if you forget something, you can look back and see how it was originally, I guess. Jessa, are you going to the Vegas Expo in August? I wasn't planning on it. I like going to one a year, and we went to the gadget repair, GRE Expo, Gadget Repair Expo, is that what it is? Last October, but I don't know if they're doing another one of them. So I don't know. We are gonna, we'll see. I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. In New York, living in the Finger Lakes, summer is this little precious nugget of sunshine in New York. So it's hard for us to leave and go anywhere. We'd love to go places during the winter though, for sure. All right, so I'm still kind of like tugging on this and trying to figure out what is keeping this in here. And I can see, aha, over here, there is some sort of a button. Let's put that on its side and see if we can figure out what that is. So I'm doing this live, just showing you guys, how we think, and ooh, we gotta get this toggle wheel thing off there. And let's see how we're gonna be able to do that. And then I might turn this into an edited video once we kind of figure it out and like have an answer. All right, so just using my finger, I'm curious if I can push that little jack to get it out of its frame. This is where you kind of have to like use some experience. Ooh, this whole piece comes out. Oh, look at that. What is that for? Is that like an antenna? Here, let me show you guys this. Brad has a pair of these, and he really likes them, so he was a big fan. Look at that. It's got this little wheelie thing. Does that work? Which looks like it would be some kind of an antenna. All right. So this turn piece is kind of the holdup, I think. So let me jump back under here and see if we can figure out how are we gonna get that out. So one sad option would be having to desolder, which is possible, but that would be rough. Yeah, it looks like that is how that's attached. Let's see, is there one on the other side? Yes. All right, that is gonna be rough. Let's take some suggestions. Hey, chat, how can we get, let's see if you guys can see. Let's go look at the hand cam. How can we get, this is a little wheel, that wheel, flipping it over, this little wheelie guy, and it is really kind of in the plastic housing, which is going to be hard to, I don't think we could, pushing it's going to be rough, maybe possible. Does anybody have any suggestions on how we could get that out? Let's see. See what chat has to say. Can the housing be separated? It doesn't look like it. It looks like it's one piece of injection molded plastic, maybe. I don't think so. All right, let's pull that over. It is going to be a drag if we have to desolder it just to flip this board upside down. It is really just such a shame that, you know, repair is just faced with these kinds of silliness, right? That you can't really get this like plastic button out of the housing easily. Which kind of tells us that these things were soldered to begin with, like from inside here. This is all plastic. Okay, we got that piece up, which just leaves this little wheel guy. And let's see if I can. I feel like I'm like, it's like close. All right, there we go. All right, let me show you guys how I got it out. Hand cam. All right, does the board lift on the other end? Okay, so the problem here was two spots. This wheel thing, and there is a button right here. So A and B were both really jammed in there. So you could lift this up, but both of those were holding it in. And I couldn't like pull it out this way until I just sort of pushed, like kind of a shoehorned this to get that one free from the plastic. And then at that point I could lift it from here and pull it out. All right. The good news is that I think it'll be possible to stick it back in like that. All right, so now let's look and see where does the port go, because we're gonna have to fix all those pads, those little red pads that we took off to begin with. Up on the other side of the board, we have, let's just take a look under the microscope so we can show you guys what this looks like. All right, so let's look at this board. This is cool. These are your Arctis headphones, SteelSeries Arctis headphones. We've got a bunch of little tiny components. We got one brain, one chip, some big capacitors. Then the other side of our wire, which is red, orange, blue, and green. And we've got our little wheel guy. Look at this, is kind of little, is that corrosion? Or hot, this kind of looks like hot glue. This is super glue. Yeah, we'll just super glue in there. I mean, look at the solder on this little diode. That is kind of rough. Okay, nevertheless, we've got our whatever port that is. And then, right here at the very end of the board, this is the charge port. Right, so here we are right at the end. This is the spot that we have to operate on. So I think I'm not gonna bother to desolder this, even though it would make it easier. So let me show you guys that. I'm not gonna bother to desolder that. I'm gonna leave that because our spot here is right at the end. So let's turn this around a little bit. And we are going to look at this problem and see what will it take for us to electrically connect our new port. All right, let's get back under the microscope and check it out. So right now, I think, you have to be cautious, but I think if I were to do this again, once you kind of get a little bit of experience with how these things go together, I think it's pretty doable. Okay, so we've got the good news is we've got 2 spots left. These little anchor pads here that we should be able to put a new port in and have it grip, but everything else is gone. This anchor, all of these pads, that anchor, is gone. So we won't really have a good way to solder our new port on that spot. So in that case, sometimes I would even consider an epoxy or something like that to hold it on there. I've already told Morgan that he's got to learn how to be careful with these ports. All right. Okay, so let's kind of clean that out on both sides. Here's the other side. A little bit of flux. Clean that up a little bit on both sides and make it nice. Ready? Fudge it. Just tear it out. Tear what out? My wires? Can the housing be flexed enough to pass the wheel? Yes. Yes, apparently. All right. Let's see. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm downgrading the alloy here. And let's grab some braid. If you have the room, I have run a thicker jumper wire over top of the port and soldered it to the top and then made pads off of the side to hold it. Interesting. I like the way you think. That is Chris, who says that he is thinking about bolting that thing in there with a wire, which is a cool idea. All right. We'll see. We'll take a look and see how it goes. This is the part of repair that I like. You know, it's surprisingly, it's creativity, it's an art more than a science. So we'll just kind of solve problems, making decisions as we go. All right, that bottom side, this is the bottom side of it, that looks good. And let's flip it back up. And let's take a look at the top side and clean that off. And then we're going to make a plan. So one thing we could do for all of our missing pads here is we could put on solder lugs. We could stick solder lugs on here. Do you guys know what solder lugs are? Maybe if you don't watch a lot of iPhone microsoldering, you haven't heard of solder lugs. Hey Brad, you got any solder lugs? Oh, Brad, it is way later. It is past Brad o'clock. Oh my gosh. Do you have any solder lugs, Christy? We'll show you a solder lug, but I'm not going to bother with solder lugs because on this one, I don't really think that solder lugs are going to help me with any kind of mechanical support. Christy saves the day. Here's what solder lugs are, which would be these little pad stickers. So we could grab one if we wanted to. These are mostly for iPhones, and you could create a new pad, but I'm not going to bother with that. I think they're too small, and we can accomplish the same thing with a wire. All right, so let's look at this so that we know where we're going with these torn pads, because ultimately, though, we do have to make electrical connection. So right here, this is ground. Right here, this is also ground. We can read the board. We can see that that's all one thing, that's ground. Over here, this is more ground, and that is also ground. So 1, 2, 3, 4 were ground. Now we've got this stuff over here, which oddly seems pretty isolated from the rest of this. So I'm going to use my multimeter because I just want to know, is A and B electrically the same? Because if they are, then when I put the new port in, I could put a jumper here and like kind of mechanically attach it to that. But I don't know if it is or not. So let's see. Also, we can test out whether or not my multimeter, my on-screen multimeter, does it work? No. God damn it. Whoa. I don't know. Chris, do you ever find this when you do a stream that if I activate the on-screen multimeter, it makes the mouse completely wig out. So it's like you can't handle two optical inputs. All right, I'm going to give up on that. I'm going to use the old school multimeter, which is the trust-based, the iPad Rehab trust-based multimeter. All right, so we're going to just put it in continuity mode. Beep. Okay, so let's just make sure. All right, you're ground, and so are you, and so are you, and so are you. But what about you over here? So I'm just going to scrape this, and that is the same. Okay, so now I know that if I wanted to, I could put like kind of a big wire here and or here to try and help this port stay on if I wanted to. All right, achievement unlocked. Now let's go back. Uh-oh, do I still have this? You are in the spotlight today. What does that mean? Got given Arctis 7 SteelSeries headphones and told if I can fix them, I can keep them. Use the reset button and they worked fine every day for months. Nice, I like that a lot. The good old, have you tried turning it off and on? All right, let's look at our two port choices that we have here. We've got our upcycled TriStar tester port, and now filled with flux. And we've got our OG port that this thing came with. They look, they look not quite perfectly the same. Will we have any trouble? So the one that I want to put on has this kind of lip around it, and that, given how hard it was to snug this thing in where it goes, I'm a little bit worried about that. But I do kind of like this one better. So let's see. Does it fit in here nicely or no? Well, let's see. Let's get it up on the side. Sometimes you can, bang on these different ports a little bit and find out, you can kind of push on the metal and modify it a little bit. It would have to stick out a little bit. I have to bend that in. I don't know. Do you think that sticking out that much would make it too hard to put back in here? I think we're going to have to play it safe and give old Morgan back his original port. All right, fair enough. Let's look at the original port. Here's the original port. Spin it around. And the original port. It just doesn't stick out as much. It's more flush right here. Okay. Sorry, TriStar tester port. We tried. We're going to have to go with this. Okay. So now I am going to first solder the anchor points in so that way it stays in place. And then I'm going to have to do something about these missing pads here. Let me just look and see, where does this one go? All right, that one goes right there. Let's make sure you guys can see that. So how do we deal with the missing pads? Sometimes you have to do something before the port goes on, which might be to like lay a little jumper here. So we can read the board. This pad goes to this little tiny via right there, that green guy, light green guy. And then this one goes here to the other side of that guy. This one goes to this guy. And this one goes to that guy. So those ones will be really easy. 1, 2, 3 to make a jumper. And then this one here that goes to this little via. Let's see, where does that via go on the other side? Probably to this test point, which would make it, I think it's still pretty easy, but if you are doing this at home, let's check to see whether or not you could get away with putting a wire. Does test point 401 go back around to the missing pad? Yes or no? So let's just answer that if we can. All right, so let's do this like kind of a cheater way. Let's grab let's just get a little bit of wire and answer that. I don't know if I have any wire nearby. Oh, maybe a piece of braid from the braid depot here. Let's just want to find out whether or not you could use that test point if you were in need of pad repair like this one. So whoever asked me about, like, can I send you my bows? Finding the exact, like, a compatible port or component is sometimes the hardest part. I think that we probably could modify the, the TriStar tester port to make it work, but it would be a little bit harder than this. All right, so I'm just curious about this. Would it be worth removing some coating and exposing some more ground plane under the port for better anchoring? That's a great question. So right now, these guys don't need anything. But on the other side, I would consider doing that based on how solid it seems like the port goes in once I get it in there. So first we're going to anchor it in, and then we're going to attach the pins, and then we're going to decide if we want to kind of like run a thick jumper to kind of help it out. Okay, so all I did here was I'm just trying to ask a question while it's open, while we have this job in front of us. I'm going to put a little wire here so that I can ask with my multimeter. I want to ask whether or not this little via here, does that actually go through to that test point? And if it does, then I could make a jumper that goes like this and kind of wraps back. If it's something else, then I can't do that, in which case I'm going to have to tie into that via for my port. So let's just find out. Multimeter, what say you on what goes here? So I'm going to have to, like, scraping is raping. So I'm just going to gently rub a little bit so that I can get to the copper. Are you the same? It is the same. Aha! Okay, so now I don't have to put a jumper right here on this via. I could, and I think I will just to show you guys, but I don't have to. So if you're not working with a microscope, and this is DIY, then you can make jumpers to heal this as follows. Put your port on, and then make a wire from the test point on the other side of the board. So recall that the test point on the other side of the board, TP401. Put some solder on that, put a wire on that, and then you can restore continuity back to your new pin that way for that one. And then it'll be relatively easy for you to make a jumper from here to there. So A to B, A to B, and A to B. Got it? All right, so that's going to be our plan now that we've worked that out. I'm going to leave that wire there as just our alternate. And then if you do have microsoldering equipment, and it's pretty straightforward. It's super tiny, but it is pretty doable. But before I put that port on, it's a lot easier for me to just get this little piece tinned, the little via. All right, so we're gonna get that tinned up, get a little solder on there. I'd like it to be kind of a blob. That would be easy to tag into. And there's a little bit too much flux there for it to do that right this second. All right, what do you guys think? Which jumper would you make? All right, let's just want that to be a little bit of a juicier jumper spot. And then we're going to get this on here and wrap this up. All right. Test point would be more solid, but the via connection shouldn't be under stress. I kind of like both of the test point and the via. There we go. That's what I want it to look like, right there. All right. All right, so let me show you where we are now as we are about to put the port on. I don't see any need to do anything else right now. Next step is to get the port on, and then we'll kind of see how strong it is, and then we'll make these connections and decide if we need to add strength to it or not. Okay, so that's now ready for the port. All right, so this port, let's just take a look at it and see if there's anything that we need to do. Nope, not really. I don't think so. All right, so new port is coming in. And it kind of fits nicely in there. And you want it to be flat, 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 flat. So I will put a little bit of solder here just to kind of anchor it on there. And then I will hit it on the other side to sink its feet in there. All right, so it's anchored on there a little bit. So let me flip it. And let's take a look at it right there. And let's go ahead and fill up these. What kind of unusual things have you fixed lately with your soldering iron at home? I'm curious, what kinds of things, as you kind of think beyond just phones, what kind of interesting stuff have you done? What kind of devices are both feasible? You can get some components that break and that have, you know, a reasonable value that it makes sense to fix. All right, so now this guy's on here, and the next step is to connect its feet with some jumpers. So I think I'm gonna just continue on with what you would probably have around you as DIY, which is copper braid. So I've just cut some pieces of copper braid here, and let's just attach these guys where they go. So this is pretty tiny, but it's not crazy. All right, so we're gonna go on foot number 1. And we can read the board and see that that goes over here to the resistor with a circle on it. All right, this is gonna have to move around to be compatible for the left-handed. How many of you guys in chat are left-handed? I feel like left-handed people kind of grow up a little bit ambidextrous, and they tend to be drawn to tiny stuff like this. All right, that's gonna, see how it's difficult to make that joint right now? With a little bit of flux, maybe a bigger tip would help make that flow. So if you're struggling, if it feels like mud, you need heat and flux, because it should be easy, just like that. Let me show you what that looks like. It's solidly in there. I can wiggle this and it is not going to come off. All right, there we go. All right, so let me make sure that my tail end here, I'm going to remove so that it's not going to touch anything. I don't want it to touch the neighbor. No touch. Keep your hands to yourself. All right. There it is. All right, next one. Next one goes nowhere. So I'm going to leave that guy alone. Yeah, this guy doesn't go anywhere. Third guy goes to here, and that guy goes there. So let's grab some more jumper wire and we're gonna do that. Just fixed a video intercom today. Had to drill a hole in the PCB because water had gone into it and started charring between two lines. Yikes. Okay, so let's speed this up and get our jumpers done. Let's see. Iron that guy back out straight. And he goes over to this side right here. Fixed up my old Tomy Turbo racing game my parents had in the loft for 35 years. That sounds really fun. 35 years, incandescent bulb and motor was blown, so I swapped in a new motor and an LED replacement bulb. That is awesome. A lot of fun. Tomy Turbo racing game. Now let's grab another one of these guys. And we're gonna go right here. Just a little bit up in the air, and I want him to be. Bye, Christy. Night. And then there was one. I remember the old days when 7:30 p.m. would be just when we all put the kids to bed and came over to the shop and got started. All right, now this guy's going here, but I really don't want him to touch the neighbor. So we will have to make an effort to insulate these guys. There we go. And then our final one, I've got my jumper from the other side of the board that can come right around like that. I think I will show you guys that both ways, and I might even leave it both ways. Tiny jumper and a regular jumper. That needs to be stretched out. All right, so let's make sure you guys can see what's going on here. Blob. Let's see. I build part work models and have designed, made, and coded my own circuit board and phone app to operate the light sounds via Bluetooth. That sounds awesome. Super fun. Repair is alive and well. All right, we're gonna grab last jumper two ways. Let's just burn that a little bit. And we're gonna get this guy on here. All right, so that's part one. So it's on the foot, and I'm just gonna bend it around. And stick it on the via. Where did it go? So we've made that nice little juicy spot right there. Done. Now let's do this as a test. Let's use the multimeter to just ask, do we have a good connection on all of these spots? This one in particular. That's not how I wanted that to wiggle off. All right, so in particular, let's do this with the multimeter. We're gonna do continuity, beep, and we are gonna say, do we get a beep from our buddy, the loose wire? So wire to foot. Nope. Well, I'm glad I checked on that, because either something's not making connection, or, yeah, okay. Probe wasn't making connection. There we go. We do get a beep. Okay, so what does that tell us? That tells us that we have made that jumper just fine. So if we wanted to, you guys could bring this guy around and similarly tag it right in there. I'm gonna not do that because this guy, if he were to touch ground or just kind of like get severed, I'm not gonna bother. But it's a perfectly viable way to do that. So instead, I'm gonna just delete that wire. So I hope we're clear on that you could solder from our test point 401 to this pad if your pad was missing. All right, so I think that we have a good connection. Yeah, I can see all these are fine. All right, so the last thing is just, what about the port itself, and it's, you know, like, is it just gonna kind of rip off? So I think I will do, like, this is where we could be creative. What do you guys think? I could do something that's like a, you know, something big like that, you know, to just kind of help it stay on there. A wire. What do we have around here that would be a good wire? What do you guys think I should do? Should I leave it and carry on or not? Solder mask time. Okay. Hobbyist blew up a few components in the process, but learned from that. All right. It is hard to design a circuit board from scratch. That sounds really fun, though. I'd like to do that in my old age. Okay, let's see. Let me just grab some like 36 gauge wire and see how thick that looks. If I can find any. Here's a thicker wire. When everybody goes home, I have to find everything myself. I don't know where anything is. Only Christy knows where the 36 gauge wire is. Oh, I'm just going to show you another option. So I don't think this is really going to help us or really add to anything here, but just to kind of show you another idea of what is possible. So we already used the multimeter to prove to ourselves that this is ground, same as that over here, and same as this up here. So therefore, if we want to, we can just kind of make a little spot right here. I'm just going to push away a little bit of the mask and kind of make an anchor pad-ish. And we're going to do kind of like if you got a Christmas tree and you're going to do some guy wires to keep it from falling over when the cat climbs up it. We're going to do basically the same thing right here with this guy. So I'm going to grab my soldering iron, kind of the big iron, and I'm just going to make that be a blob. So I'm just putting some heat. Now it's going to take a lot of heat. This is ground. The ground is going to chew up all the heat that I'm putting there from the iron. All right, so we should, though, be able to tin this ground plane eventually. It's coming along a little bit. And we're kind of making our own pad. Why? Just to help it out a little bit, just to give it a little bit more stability, since we know this was kind of fragile to begin with. All right, so I want to see that a nice juicy blob here that is a good spot to solder to. Now my flux is burning up, it makes it hard to see. All right, there we go. I'm happy with that. And I'm going to put my insulated wire right on there. But first I have to burn off the insulation on the wire. And it'll go on there. Okay. Let's clean that up so you guys can see what that looks like. And this is just going to be a little guy wire that we're going to put on the top of that. Maybe scrape the ground plane right next to the port and solder the entire length. I think it's fine. Honestly, if you really wanted it to be, if you were like, I really want this to last forever, what I would do is I would clean it up, solder on just the anchor parts, and then I would use epoxy. And then once it's epoxy, sort of a bead of epoxy under here, underneath here, just epoxy under there, and then do your jumpers and let it kind of hang on there with some solid epoxy. But there's no rules. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm just kind of showing you an option. One option here is we're just going to put this little guy wire on here because you can. Now, when it's real blobby like this, that's actually, not ideal. So this has like too much on there. I'm going to take some braid and get rid of that. You don't want it to look like these giant big, parties there. Because remember, a lot of times these ports have to kind of fit in a really narrow bit of plastic. Okay, let's chop off the end of that. And the other end of it. Okay, so where are we now? What's going on with this now? This is, I think, electrically sound, but pretty ugly, and we're gonna have to do something to make sure that these things don't touch each other. And I don't like to leave flux on here either. In fact, it probably wouldn't be a terrible idea to just kind of hold this in the ultrasonic just to get the flux out of this port, even though this is technically no clean flux. There's always some residue. I'm going to put a little needle tip alcohol on here just to try to dilute out some of this flux and get a fresh Q-tip and clean it up. So solder mask, green stuff, doesn't like flux and it doesn't like alcohol. All right, so we have to kind of get it all dry. Okay, once this is reasonably dry, then we're going to put on some green. So this is the solder mask. That might be worth going on the shopping hunt again. Let's see, so that you guys, if you don't fix iPhones, you don't have this stuff laying around, maybe you don't know what I'm talking about. Solder mask. So let's go to customize there, and I'm going to type in green. So at the iPadRehab.com supply store, iPadRehab.com, click supply, and let's see if we can find, we can't find the green, the solder mask. All right, so YouTube doesn't have the solder mask. Let's look for UV. Let's see if we can find that. Nope, YouTube doesn't have either one of those in its list of things that I can pick from. So go to iPadRehab.com supply store and you can find the green that I'm going to use solder mask and a UV light that is the companion thing, those things together. I tried making the supply store very searchable, but probably could do a better job with that. All right, so all I'm doing right now is putting a little bit of green on. I like to put it on ye old Post-it. There we go. Here's some green. And I'm just going to use one side of the tweezers and go back under the microscope and just make sure these guys can't talk to each other. Now this stuff is actually very needs to be very thin. So if it's a big blob like that, that will not cure. So it needs to be kind of a thin, like painting fingernails. The big blob will just kind of like crust over, and you want it to be kind of thin. All right, so our main goal is just that these guys have some little coating on them so that they can't really touch. All right, good enough. And now we're going to cure it with UV light. UV light, and I'm just plugging the UV light into a regular USB charger. All right, here we go. Fell down. I moved things around hoping that I could show you guys the charger. Here it is. All right, so I've got my UV light, and don't look at that. And we're gonna cover it up. All right, so we're gonna let this cure for a few minutes. And then the next thing, when I'm fixing stuff, one thing I've learned the hard way is to test. So before I try to shoehorn this back into the headphones, I'm gonna see if it looks like it's charging. So I'm gonna show you how we're gonna test and ask the question, are you charging? And then hopefully it is, and we'll be able to put it all back together. So let's see. What will be the celebratory song played when this is fixed? I don't know. Something that does not have a copyright strike from YouTube. I do have this like big Rodecaster mixer that I was tempted when I was like setting stuff up for being able to stream and kind of click between scenes. I thought it would be fun to have these little audio things. You can program them. So I thought it'd be cool to just make a catchphrase or a jingle, which would just be, "You need rehab." But I need somebody with like a radio voice that could do "You need rehab." All right, let's see if this is cured. So we're gonna turn that off and check it out. All right, so now that is all crunchy, nice and crunchy. Okay, now we have to find out, does it charge? So how are we going to do that? So does it charge? Let's go to the hand cam, and we've got our port on here. So before we try to put it all back together, let's take the USB ammeter, which is the tool that tells us whether or not something's charging. So here's how we're going to tell. We're going to get rid of the... All right, we're going to... Let's make it so that it's facing the right way. 5 volts. This is just a regular charger plugged into an extension cord. And now I need a micro USB charging cable, which I've dug one of these up. Okay, so if this thing is able to charge, which I don't know if it's going to require us to plug that thing in or not. If we can see it charge now, then we're good to go. That is a lightning cable. That's not going to help me. This is micro USB. Probably, I don't see a battery, so I'm going to guess that it will need us to plug that in. But let's just see. All right, how to not be Morgan and get into this business to begin with. I'm going to look at it under the microscope so that I am sure that I know which way to plug the cable in. All right, let's see. And it goes in like that. All right. Right now, it is not charging. How do I know? Because I can see. Right now, it's not charging, which doesn't really surprise me because it's not going to charge until without a battery connected, and this thing kind of is missing its connection here. Where is the battery? Probably over here, but I don't know that for sure. It feels pretty heavy. I don't see anything that looks like a battery over here, so that must be it. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and plug in. Let's start connecting this stuff back. Is this a battery? Probably not. That's probably just a speaker. All right, I'm gonna go back under the microscope to connect my connector because I don't want to get it wrong. And then we'll ask it if it can charge again. All right, let's see. We need the movie phone guy to voice it. Yeah, I need somebody. Maybe just I could ask Lewis to do it. He's got kind of a movie voice. All right, let's see what's going on in here. All right, where did that go? I would like to just get a test before shoehorning this back in here. Okay, so we gotta, I remember the brown one was at the top. Okay, so I just connected that. All right, now does it charge? Let's find out. Does it charge? Nope, still not charging. Although, this little red light lit up. Oh, it is charging. Yay! All right, yeah, it's charging and its little doohickey's going. All right, so now we see, aha, the charge port is working. All right, so now that we have checked that, and this is called a USB ammeter. So if you want to get one, these are incredibly useful. If you don't have a USB ammeter, get a USB ammeter because it's, you know, really useful for things like this where you know, let's say you don't want to fix your port. You can charge it just by wiggling it until you see that you've got some charging current when you've got a device that doesn't also have a handy little LED light. Okay, so that tells us, all right, it appears to be charging. Great. So we will disconnect, and now we're going to try to get this thing put all the way back together. All right. I'm going to be really mad if Morgan comes down here in a week and he's like, it broke again. All right. My guess is you'll see current draw. My guess is I'll see current draw as well. Okay, so what do we need to do to get this back in here? That's got to lay down there. All right, so hand cam. I have piles of USB ammeters with broken off ports. Well, gets to fixing. Gets to putting those ports back on there. All right, so the hard part here is just, these just kind of can slip in there now, at least in theory. I think I made that harder than it needed to be on the install, but I am gonna look at it under the microscope to be sure that I kind of shoehorn that right in there. But that's where I'm going with that. Okay, so this guy, is gonna have to go there. You're gonna have to go there. You're gonna have to go there. And my porty. This is where, if it had the other port that I wanted to put on, the one that had kind of a lip, you know, like it might be just too big of a challenge to slide in there. All right, so let's get some kind of a tool that can get that in there. The good old iPad Rehab tweezers that fix everything. That's all appears to be going. And I'm going to look at it on the that's in there. That's lining up. Oh, I wonder if this like gouge mark is how like that thing gets in there to begin with. Oh, this is tight. That's what she said. That's gotta go down. Gotta go down below. It's gotta go on top of that thing. It seems largely in there. All right, here's our port. I can see how there's a like stress on that is, you know, not great. All right, he looks happy, back in his normal spot. He was rattling around in here at the beginning. All right, let's figure out who else needs to move a little bit. This guy, I don't remember him. This is the ugly side of live streams for sure. I need a bigger prying guy. There we go. Is everybody happy? Getting happier. That's on there. That's where he goes. That's where he goes. That's where he goes. That's where he goes. Yay! All right, I think everybody's in their right spot. Huzzah. That is probably the hardest spot. All right, I'm gonna put 2 screws in, and then we have to solder back on our headphone guy. And we'll be close to being done with this, which took a lot longer than I thought. But nevertheless, it is always good to do jobs like this that can just make somebody happy, especially for our locals. We love to do little extras. I'm gonna do another maybe video of a local job. A girl from the Girl Scout troop broke her electric scooter, and her dad brought it in here, and it looks like something, a couple wires to solder back in, because I would like this summer to inspire everybody to fix odd stuff. That one might work. That one's too small. All right, it looks like it was close to this. Might have been ultimately Brad's special. There's a special driver that's called TriStar. Oh, that seems like that's okay. All right, this one looks like it's just a standard one. So we'll go here. Board screw number 1. Yep, the board screws are standard Phillips head regular screws. Board screw number 2. And speaker. I refurbish HVAC related PCBs as long as the microcontroller and the software is intact. Everything else is a jelly bean part and can be bought aftermarket. Okay, now we have to remember what side was blue and what side was ground. Well, I'm going to do a video next week where we're going to see whether or not the headlight in my Tesla is married to the board. It better not be. It better not be. All right here. I believe that we said that the blue went next to the test point. Correct me if I'm wrong. Speak now, chat. We said blue wire went to the test point. Didn't we? Pretty sure. Blue wire next to the test point. A little bit of flux. And get this back on. I think that for this video to be useful to anybody, I'm going to have to learn how to massively edit. That's always the struggle. Oops. I don't know what this seems like, a weird, kind of a weird alloy. I'm going to put a little bit of regular solder on there. Okay. Speak now. Did the blue wire go next to the test point? I'm counting on you guys. Blue wire was next to the test point. Whew. Another plus to live streaming stuff. Chat will not troll me. They will not let me down. They will not allow me to solder it on the wrong way. Because they know. Poor Morgan would be sad. Okay. So that's back on. Decent little side business. 9 to 5 is an HVAC equipment installer. I have been really curious about, I've been thinking about like hot tub circuit boards. Those are like really expensive. They're like over $1,000. Like, you know, who's fixing these things? You know, same thing like maybe the expensive electric pianos. All right, let's go back to hand cam. I think that is a really great idea. The idea of working in an industry where you are the installer of whatever it is, and that you then can have access to bad boards and fix them. We had our furnace replaced, and the guy was like, you know, this stuff, as far as on the parts market, had value, but I was too dumb to really know how to like take it apart and list it on eBay or whatever you do with it. Okay, so now we gotta figure out what is making that not happy. Oh, I see. It doesn't go down like it seems like it would. It's meant to sit up like the other one. All right, fair enough. Kind of not happy with how those wires are soldered on. So I'm going to have to edit that. Now that I see how this kind of sits back down in that hole, it's pretty clear that it wants that to be done the opposite way. So we'll have to edit that really quick. Come out. I know it's a little bit out of focus for you guys because it's kind of up high. There we go. I think this blue wire is kind of meant to sink down into that hole. That isn't quite. All right, now I think that that piece will fit in there a little bit better. Get down in there. And lines up. In theory. Seems okay. I love the microscope. All right, so I can see on the microscope, you know, like, yes, that hole is completely lined up. And old Morgan only has 2 of the 3 screws, which is okay. We'll have to just pick one to leave off. You know, it really feels right. Alright, now I'm going to have to find a better driver for that one. This guy. Not this guy? I'm surprised it's not that guy. Maybe that's the one that he kind of stripped. Let's try a different a different bit. I might try one of my screws from the old TriStar tester. They look about the same. And this missing one. Oh yeah, that's really nice. In fact, I think I will replace them all with those matching screws. Upcycled the TriStar tester screws. Last one, I really don't like you. TriStar tester screw, way better. I like it. Okay, move this out of the way. Move all of that out of the way, and it's done. Looks done. I think it's done. I think it's going to work. And my last step is to see if we can charge it up now that it is all back together. So we're going to grab our USB ammeter. And if it doesn't work, it's time for margaritas. All right, where does this go? All right, we'll have to plug it in. And boo. Oh, yay. Yay! Man, that thing gives you a heart attack. It's like, why are you not charging? You should definitely charge. All right, there we go. Success. It is, you can see its little red light. It's charging. We can see charging current. And we're going to leave it there to charge up all night long. And then we'll let Morgan know that he's ready to go in the morning. So there you go. It took longer than you probably would want to watch a live stream for, but there you go. We have successfully replaced the charge port on a pair of SteelSeries Arctis 7. I think these are headphones for a local guy, and this is something that I would probably do again once you kind of see it done. You can kind of see where the hardships are, but not too bad of a repair. You could probably speed it up if you were like just had a pile of them to do. Then it would probably go not too far. I think I will edit this down for anybody else that is looking for, hey, can I do this? What does it look like? I think if the pads aren't all ripped off, it's going to be a lot easier. So yeah, have at it. Get a charge port. It would probably work with a little bit more shoehorning. You could Dremel out a bigger opening so that you could use any micro USB port that you could get in there. You can tweak them, bend them a little bit, and just get them in there if yours is broken because the plastic is broken, which is also really common. So there you go. That is how you do it. Coil spin, exactly. All right, so I'm going to edit this one down so that you guys can see how that goes. And this is it for today's Fix Odd Stuff series. And I will see you guys next time.